Every Black girl, every Black woman, every Black femme and butch, we should celebrate exactly who we are as individuals and together as loudly as we please. Those of us who happily swing a 30-inch weave like Reese, those of us who rock a tightly faded frohawk, the waist length locks, the patterned cornrows, the colorful braids, the bald baddies, the switch it up when I please freedom of wig wearing mamas keeping unknowing coworkers questioning how you changed your hair so quickly. Our skin in all of its shades, the way we look in the color yellow, our beautiful lips so often ready to speak the truth, damn who it makes uncomfortable. Our history, our present, and our future. No, our nails are not too long, and yes, we can still type and get things done with them because we always get things done. We have raised babies, often not our own, and communities. We influence elections and culture. Our words and phrases and dances gleefully learned even by those who would deny us our humanity. We can be loud and unyielding. We can be soft and tender. We are all beautiful. We are never too much and always enough. Welcome, good people. My name is Debbie Stroman, and I'm honored to serve as the moderators for today's webcast, Can You See Us, Black Women in Sports? Our goal is to provide you with our reflections, being sports-minded women who are very, very close to sports and the business of sports. I'm blessed to be in the presence of four amazing panelists that I greatly respect. Join me by way of claps and words in the chat box in welcoming Shalise M. Young. Shalise is the writer of those powerful words I just read. My media sister, shout out to the National Association of Black Journalists, is one of two Black women sports writers at a major news outlet in the entire country. She is an award-winning journalist who has transitioned to column writing for Yahoo Sports in 2015, focused on race and gender in sports. A former member of Yahoo NFL team after covering the New England Patriots for over 9 seasons, 4 with the Providence Journal and 5+ with the prestigious Boston Globe. Welcome, my sister.
Thank you so much.
Audra Smith, my UVA basketball sister, is a former head coach of the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Clemson University, and South Carolina State at HBCU. She currently serves as the vice president of Play for K at the K-Yow Cancer Fund. Play for K is the fund's largest fundraiser and national grassroots movement across all 50 states. She directs strategic partner acquisition, stewardship, and activation for a very important nonprofit that helps to provide access to quality cancer health care for underserved women. She has a lot to say. Welcome, my sister. Unmute, Audra. Dr. Lori Martin, my academic sister, is a professor in the Department of Sociology and African American Studies at Louisiana State University, the newly crowned national champions of Division I hoops. Dr. Lori has authored many scholarly works and books, including Big Box Schools, White Sports, Black Sports, and 2 that are timely for our discussion: Black Women as Leaders, Challenging and Transforming Society, and Black Community Uplift and the Myth of the American Dream. Her insights are valuable as a researcher and the faculty athletics rep for LSU regarding NCAA and SEC matters. Welcome, Dr. Lori. And lastly, thank you. And lastly, a woman who leads as a servant warrior, my sister, Bev Kearney. We share a deep passion for the uplift of our community. Along with Dr. Lori, Coach Bev and I are members of the Advancement of Blacks in Sports, an organization that is purposed to be the voice of racial equity in sports. Founded by Gary Charles, ABS does its work by sharing information, hosting events, calling out bad behavior that causes harm, and promoting the brilliance and excellence of Black athletes, coaches, and administrators. We encourage you to visit our website at weareabis.org to learn more and engage in our work. Coach Bev is the founder of Pursuit of Dreams, She's recognized as one of the most successful coaches in NCAA history. She's been inducted to various halls of fame as sports legend, including the prestigious International Women's Sports Hall of Fame. Her record of 7 national championships in track and field is one of the highest among African American and female women in the country. She's been honored with the BET Legacy Award for Education. She currently provides counsel and guidance to athletes and coaches seeking a winning formula for success. Welcome, Coach Bev.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Let's go.
Yes, I'm fired up. Let's get this purposeful party started. Black women athletes have been held to different standards than white counterparts over the years for decades, and is evidenced by Serena and Venus Williams. So I want to start off, Coach Bev, and have every one of you comment on what are your reactions to the 2023 Women's Basketball Final Four, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What really, the stuff just hit the fan for all the world to see and comment. Coach Bev.
I am in a place of pure gratitude because it is easy to fall asleep on our successes, but sometimes there's something that happens within our society that ignites and unites everyone with a common cause to address injustices that have been going on for generations. I remember being at the US Open during Venus's actually early years, and the questions they asked her, and I sat and watched in the interview room, had very little to do with tennis. It had to do with, why do you have beads on your hair? What is that symbolizing? How is it to be a representative, not of the sport, not of women, not of the country, but of Black Americans? And so this has gone on for generations, and then to watch Serena go through it, but then to watch the youth say, because we've been taught to adjust to all the adversity, they're saying, why? Why do I have to take it? Mm-hmm. And that's why we're sitting at the table today, because someone stood up, as opposed to Rosa Parks sitting down, Angel stood.
Thank you. Thank you. Coach Audra Smith.
Oh, Lord. You know, when the microphone is handed my way, just cut me off, or as everyone tells me at the office, okay, Audra, land the plane. Just land the plane. First of all, in terms of the Final Four, I thought it was phenomenal to be a former participant in the Final Four, 90, 91, and 92. We were in the Final Four when I was at UVA. It was fantastic, but we didn't have the fan base at that time. But to see that crowd, to see that sellout crowd at the Final Four, at the semifinals, and at the finals was just absolutely phenomenal. There's so much that I want to talk about with everything. To see, the broadcast table and who was at the broadcast table. That was just like, I have chills right now still just thinking about that. And then also, so those were the great things. That 9.9 million, am I right? Am I correct on the number there of the viewers for the championship game? Unbelievable. Yes. Absolutely unbelievable. I'm actually here visiting my sister in Georgia, and her husband, who is actually a FAMU grad, is super excited about women's basketball. Has always been, not because I coached it, but he knows a lot more about some of the players than I do. So I think what it did was it really brought a spotlight, and it's shown a great light on women's athletics and how competitive we are. And that's the area where I'm going to, and I'm going to land this plane so someone else can comment. That's where I'm going to. And people always say, I can't believe this, but I was a very quiet child, and I didn't say a lot as a child. I didn't say a lot as a young adult, but somehow I found my voice and that lioness within me. And I think it was after I had my first baby. And I'm like, no. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to let it go. It's not okay. And, I really feel like the media did a poor job of this entire situation with Angel Reese. It's because of the lack of education and lack of understanding of our youth today and what certain things mean and what is taunting. What is it taunting? If that was considered taunting, don't you think the ref would have given her a technical? If that was inappropriate behavior on the basketball court, wouldn't the ref have given her a technical? But as I'm looking at Twitter, and I don't normally look at Twitter, but as I'm looking at her Twitter and people responding, it's older white males, even though they're not showing their face, because we can be big and bad and we can have all these comments behind social media, even though they're not showing their face, but the wording and some of the comments, it's obvious. And then of course, there were some white males that actually said some extremely inappropriate things. She's a child. She's a young adult. She's an idiot. What? So Angel was like, no. And I have no problem with, the way she responded in the game. It's a game. You're passionate. You're about to win a national championship. I mean, people don't understand how hard that is. You're out of 300 and what do we have now? 80 something Division I schools. We're the best in the country. Oh my God. Think about that with your everyday career. You're the best in the country. You just won the national championship for whatever you do in life. I mean, that's just phenomenal. So of course there's going to be some spirited, I didn't want to say trash talk, some spirited conversations back and forth, chatter back and forth. And as it all came out and we came down to it, Caitlin didn't have a problem with it at all.
Well, let's hold there, because I want to talk about the going back and forth. But since you brought up media, Shalise, how about if you jump in and share your take on the Final Four?
Oh, she's muted. I think she's muted.
Sorry about that. I think very much so that there are some members of the media who don't know how to handle these sorts of things. We actually saw it the day before, 2 days before, after South Carolina lost in the Final Four, and Dawn Staley made some pretty pointed remarks that, members of the media were overheard talking about her team with, language that we would call dog whistle language, calling them bullies and those sorts of things, when they're just physical basketball players. What were they doing wrong? And I think what Bev said resonated with me so much. And hearing Dr. Debbie read my words out loud was really incredible. I read my stuff, of course, but hearing somebody else say those words out loud, I was talking to my girlfriends, and Angel is saying, and we've seen other younger Black women say, we're not going to bend for you. And for me, it took me a long time to realize that trying to appease certain people in how, we're supposed to lose graciously, we're supposed to win graciously, we're supposed to, not have long nails, we're not supposed to do all of these things to try to appease a certain segment of people. It's a futile exercise. And these young women are just so inspiring, who are saying, no, we're not going to play this little game that you're set up for us, because they know there is no winning that game. But from a media standpoint, I think it was really amazing. The 9.9 million number is just incredible. The resale, how much the tickets were going for in the resale market was just amazing. And I think now it's incumbent upon the NCAA to, it would be nice to see them monetize it, even though the women deserve to get the money, not the schools and the coaches. But, to have this perhaps be an inflection point where we really see the table turn and people are taking women's basketball, women's sports far more seriously. And, the conversation wasn't, well, who watched? Well, because clearly a lot of people did watch, because it was a tremendous game.
Dr. Martin, what's your take on the Final Four?
Yeah, I'll just say, of course, I'm super excited for the LSU Lady Tigers. They did a really great job all season. The one thing that sticks out for me, and, I have some behind the scenes access, of course, and you all, if you follow them on social media, may have seen this as well, is that not only were they a tight-knit team that supported each other and believed in each other, even when other folks did not, they also had a great support system that was intergenerational. So seeing the mothers and the family members supporting them was wonderful. To have your university president and the first lady of the university supporting you both on the court and off the court was really important. And for folks in the administration, including some Black women, come to to meetings and to talk about purpose and about staying focused and about choices and things like that. It was really just a community built up around that team, which I think a lot of people are not aware of and perhaps got lost in some of the controversy. As someone who studies race in sports, it also reminds me that sports is not just a form of entertainment, although 9.9 million people enjoyed watching the Final Four, but it is really a social institution. And so we shouldn't be surprised when people are treated differently because of their race or gender or other social characteristics. And, we're talking about Black women tonight, and I can't help but think about, hundreds of years ago where you had people like Sojourner Truth observing that, although she's Black, that her experiences are different than that of a Black man. And although she's a woman, her experiences are not the same as a white woman. And so I'm always reminded of those things and the power of the Black community coming together, oftentimes motivated by Black women to bring about change.
Thank you. So I don't know if you all agree, but certainly one of the lessons for me is the changing dynamics of competition. I'm OG, I'm old school, and you don't do a lot of in your face, whatever, the brother Yayo, you look at the scoreboard, and that shows your dominance, you're winning, or whatever. So I've spoken to quite a few young people over the past week, and they love this. They love the engagement. They love the trash talking. I got you, the looks, sit down, you're not tall enough. So what is you all's take on this? Clearly the train has left the station, and this is where we are now. So Coach Kearney, what's your take on the talk today? Help us.
I will tell you, the first thing that I learned, the first thing I was told, and I was told by Joan Cronin, the women's athletic director at the University of Tennessee, being the only Black person in the entire women's athletic department at that point in time, it was the late 80s, and being called a negress, and it was done in a very affectionate way. And she pulled me outside as the tears started to fall, and she looked me in the eye. Never forget it. Worst timing to tell me something, best thing I ever heard. So I'm going to share it with you guys. And it was, you have something special, and you're going to be great. But if you're going to be in this arena, you better get a thicker skin, and you better get it fast. And why was that the best? Because I came through in an era where there weren't any, I was the first in almost everything I did. University of Florida, University of Texas. When you're moving into those spaces and you're getting all this pushback, you better know where you stand. And I remember, Dr. Martin, LSU battling us, looking at my kids and go, when they beat us by 1 point and said we choked. Best thing to ever happen to my team. My team said for the rest of the time we're here, it will never happen to us again. But that's been going on. Have you ever been to a HBCU track meet or sports event? Have you ever been playing dominoes and spades in a home? We've been in this space. I don't know why we got sensitive about it. This is how we grew up. Has anybody ever slapped a card on the top of their head in the middle of the game and looked at you?
Yes.
You better wake up, people. We're not soft.
No.
We were built for this moment.
I love
And
it.
they didn't care whether you were a female, a male. I got cursed out in my house when I was 7 over a card game.
Coach Audra, you got to jump in here.
Listen, I'm with you. I'm right there. I didn't see, and Debbie, you and I had a lot of interaction, a lot of conversation about it while we were there at the Final Four when it was very fresh. I thought it was great. I love it because I was the queen of trash talk when I played. And they'll tell you, I would say things like, "Oh, you can't beat us. Where you going? Why are you down here in this post?" I said, "Oh, okay. I'm gonna see if you go catch this. Okay, try this. What you got?" Is that all you got? What, for real? Oh no, it ain't going down like that today. And when you block a shot, and of course we didn't say the S word, but we would say, you block a shot, get that stuff out of here. That gets you hyped. So it's like, it's now, I don't know where this has come from, where we have to be these delicate flowers, and we can't, like we mentioned about nails, you can't play in nails this long. Why not? If you can play in nails this long, if you shoot the ball and it's going in, as a coach, I don't care if your nails are this long. I had a young lady play for me when I was at South Carolina State, and that was the best experience we had at HBCU. Her braids were so long, they were at the back of her calves. And so I said to her, we called her Q. I said, Q, baby, how you gonna play with those braids like that? She goes, Smith, I got it. Because we're creative like that. She would twist her braids together, stick them down the back of her jersey, down her shorts, and they come out. I said, isn't that uncomfortable? She's like, no. And then she'd go out and get me 20. Just like that. So
Wow.
so that the thing, back to the conversation in terms of the trash talking and I think that's cool. I want to be able to do so. I want to be able to give it. Makes me want to get on the court and be like, get down, you're too short. But it has always been there, and it's a part of our culture, and it's the competitiveness that I grew up in a competitive household. My household with my 2 children that are collegiate athletes and my husband, it's a competitive household, and everyone wants to do great and wants to be the best, not only for themselves, but to represent the family. Like, you're representing your family. And, that's just something that's just a part of the game now. And for me, I know a lot of things were happening when I was at South Carolina State before I retired, and I was just some things that I just couldn't get on the boat. I couldn't get on board. I just couldn't get on with it. And so my daughter and my son would say, Mama, you're a dinosaur. Like, this is what everyone's doing. This is how it is. Like, those old rules you had in place back in the day, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's not. And you can't meet these young women and young ladies halfway. You have to meet them all the way. You have to go where they are. You have to understand the dynamics and the interactions that they're having on a daily basis with each other. Interaction on a daily basis they're having with all these other social media influences. Like, when I played, you weren't friends with the people you played against. Like, after the game, I don't want to shake her hand, even as a coach. Like, I don't want to shake her hand. But now you see them embracing sometimes after games, because they've played on AAU teams together. They're social media friends, things like that. So it is. I think it's great for the sport, and I think that what's happening is, and I'm so proud of these young women, because what Angel Reese is doing is she's allowing other young women that are thinking it and wanting to do it, but are afraid of the backlash. And she stepped out and is like, period. No, I'm doing this. I'm saying this. This is how it's going to go. Like, this is how I feel. And I'm proud of her for doing that. And also for her coach not shushing her, or people not shushing her, and are not reprimanding her for being misrepresenting the university or anything of that nature, but allowing her to be herself, her true, as she said, her true authentic self.
Let's hear Dr. Martin. Dr. Lori, you're in a position where you are a role model. You're helping these young men and women to be professional, to be a great representative of their families and the university. And yet you also have to meet them where they are, as Coach Audra stated. So what's your take on this new brand of competing, or the spotlight on this brand that has been happening for many, many decades in our community?
Yeah, so I agree with what's been said already, that, this is not a new situation. Few things are happening for the first time. What I think is really important, and part of why we're all here today, is that it becomes an issue when the same behavior is perceived differently based upon the embodiment of the individual. And so as long as we're treating everyone, the same, that's fine. And when I say we, I mean, that includes folks in the traditional mainstream media, and also thinking about the fans for various institutions and how they respond, as someone mentioned previously, on social media. So as long as, because there's always going to be variations, right? There's no such thing as a generic Black woman or a generic Black woman athlete, right? So there are some who will thrive, as the coach mentioned, on trash talking. We see that with men's sports as well. And then there are others who will just, like Dr. Deb said, look at the scoreboard, and then you don't have to talk a lot of trash if you end up winning in the end. So everyone's different, and I think we need to embrace those different personalities, and we need to, be concerned when different leagues, whether that's at the collegiate level or professional level, decide to enact dress codes, for example, that are clearly aimed at directing the behaviors of certain athletes as opposed to others. They may not say women or gender in the actual dress codes, but it may be clear that they're targeting certain groups. And we've seen that historically, like with the NBA, for example, following various high profile fights and things like that. So again, I think the main point is, are we having a double standard or treating people with unfairly and unequally? And as long as the rules are being applied the same, most people are not going to have a problem with it. And then if the rules need to be changed, then that's another conversation.
Yes. So I want to stay with this, but I want to speak to the business of sports. And Shalise, I'd like you to open up here. So we know name, image, and likeness is in college sports now. It's not universities paying athletes. Let's be clear. It's the athlete having the ability to earn money based on their brand. And so I asked the question, if we're having more of a colorful game, as in talking back and forth, the bantering, the gestures, and all of that, can the Black woman athlete be the face of these companies? So I'm going to the numbers with Angel Reese. She is noted as having the most NIL deals than any other player, man or woman, in the NCAA tournament. She's fifth on the list overall, behind several football players and a softball player at Texas. She, in terms of basketball, she has 17 NIL deals, and this was before the Final Four. But I'm wondering, for example, one of the deals was to provide, and Dr. Martin, tell me if I'm off, but to provide bags, Gucci bags and things like that for the teammates. But I'm wondering, can the Black woman athlete be accepted and be the face of companies? There's research out there that says we can sell this, we can move a product for you, but we're not necessarily going to be the face, and especially if we don't assimilate to a particular type of athlete or woman. So Shalise, can you help us enter into this space around the business of sport?
I think the answer to your question is yes, they can. But I think the more critical thing is, will they be? Will we see that happen in terms of the, endorsement deals and things like that? These NIL deals that Angel Reese has, I'm sure they're helping her and they're putting money in her pocket, but are they major, financial deals? One of the things that I've noticed, I follow track and field a lot, and it seems like, Sydney McLaughlin, who is incredibly talented, incredibly accomplished at a very young age, has all of this national recognition and her endorsement deals and things like that. But then a young woman like Athing Mu, also incredibly talented, I think, other than not having a world record in her chosen event, which is the 800, where Sydney competes in the 400 hurdles, they have the same number of medals. They're basically the same age, but Athing is a much darker skinned young Black woman. Sydney is mixed and she's a lighter skinned Black woman. And I have noticed that there is a big disparity in the number of endorsement deals that they seem to have. I follow both of them on Instagram. I haven't really seen Athing post much in terms of ads. And Sydney has at least 4 or 5 major, corporations who she does endorsement work for. So I always suspected that once we saw NIL come into play, that for women, there are 2 sisters who played at the University of Miami this year who were, I think, signed the very first NIL deals. They're twins. So that plays on the old trope about, blonde twins and how they're attractive to a certain segment of people and fantasy and things like that. There's a young at LSU. There's a young white gymnast at LSU who's not the most accomplished girl on that team, but she has a humongous social media following and things like that. So I think, unfortunately, it's the same history that we've seen for years and years and years. It's not that we're not the most talented. It's not that we're not the most accomplished. It's the endorsement dollars and the huge, advertising opportunities certainly do not seem to be following that.
Yeah, I heard Angel Reese on a podcast speaking that the dollars that she's making will going to the WNBA might be a pay cut.
Mhm.
So that's interesting.
But I think she's definitely an outlier. She's
Yes.
very much an outlier.
Very much an outlier.
Aaliyah
please.
Boston, I apologize. Aaliyah Boston, who, last year was the National Player of the Year, and was very near the top of the vote this year for Player of the Year. She seemed like she was an afterthought. And you don't really see much. I believe South Carolina, the whole women's team has a deal with Under Armour. Aaliyah had a little more face time in a national Under Armour commercial that ran during the women's tournament. But I don't think she has, she's not in the realm of what she should be given what she's accomplished.
Yeah. Coach Bev, your take on the business of sports.
And I hate to keep going back to them, but if you look at Venus and Serena's records, I remember there was a white blonde female tennis player who had the highest endorsement deals, Sharapova, who had never won. So they're letting us in the room to own our space in the room, but they will not allow us to own the room, which is being the face of a product. That's a totally different scenario. The pushback when you become the face of an athletic department as a Black person, which I faced several times, becomes a challenge mentally. Why don't you just stop doing all these other things and just coach? Because somehow they view visibility with credibility and credibility with power. And the last thing they want to do is empower us for being us. But it's okay to play and make the institution or the product look good. So if you really start to look at the amount of superstars, I appreciate what you said, but what you said, if we really listen to it, Angel has the largest number, not the largest amount. That means she's had to get 17 deals just to get in the conversation. I had to win twice to stay in the conversation when football and basketball won at Tech, football and baseball won at Texas. I had to win again just to be allowed in the conversation in that particular room. And that is the reality of what they face. And it's a shame that the young lady at South Carolina isn't. I hope Dawn gets way more commercials. And I'm grateful to South Carolina for allowing her the space to become the face. But that's not the norm. And so we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, Coach Audra, I'd love for you to jump in, especially with your experience with a mid-major, a Power 6, and an HBCU in terms of the Black athlete in the business of sport. Audra, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I had a little background noise and I didn't want you guys to hear that. Well, going back from being as an assistant at UVA to head coach at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and then of course, head coach at Clemson, and then head coach at South Carolina State. I agree is the fact that, we are allowed, I was always allowed in the room because I speak well. I dress nice. I wear makeup. I typically wear a weave. In the summer, I do braids, and then I have the conversation of, oh, how'd you get your hair like that? Of course, a lot of you get that, but I wear a long weave, and I dress nice, dress appropriately, and so I'm accepted in the room. And honestly, I know I'm going to speak from the heart and from my experience. I never felt that I could be myself when I was a head coach at UAB because I was constantly trying to make sure that I dressed and I looked like the other coaches. around me in my conference, and other coaches at my level, and other coaches at the BCS level, because I wanted to be, in a Power Six conference. So that was one of the reasons why Clemson came after me, because of the way I dressed. Now, when I go to South Carolina State, the question, I felt I could be in my own skin and be truly true to myself. So some days I would wear my hair natural in a puff. Some days I would wear extensions. Some days I would wear a wig, or what have you. And there was never any question. And then when I would dress, it was like, why are you so dressed up? Girl, you don't have to dress like that. Just be you. So it was like an education. It was like a reassurance for me of that, you don't have to be someone that you're not. And I guess I think a lot of it is, being at a Power Five. It is. It's. And I agree. When you were talking about Joan Cronin, and I remember Joan Cronin, and Pat Summitt was instrumental in my career in terms of coaching. But I remember Joan Cronin. I remember having conversations with other female administrators and saying that, listen, hey, wait, when we go in this meeting, this is what we're saying. Make sure we're on the same page. This is what we're doing. Because not only, for as a woman and being a woman of color, when you go in there, it's like, you're just going in, you're going into a meeting. Like, for example, a lot of times I was on all these committees. I was on every committee that came up. Let's get Audra. Every interview committee. Oh, let's get Audra. At the committee for whatever, let's get Audra. And it's because, I was the acceptable Black woman. I wasn't, I was the educated Black woman, and I really found this offensive because an AD once told me, wow, you know what? I mean, I felt like an animal once he said it. He said, you just have the perfect pedigree. So it's almost like he was looking at my teeth and my body. And I'm like, what? Like, that's like, you have the perfect pedigree. You have almost like you have the perfect breeding. And so for the longest, that was really difficult, for me. And so, but then I had to swallow it down and do my job. And so I took that. What I did was, like what Angel's doing, what a lot of young Black women are doing, is I took that opportunity. When you let me in that room and you give me an opportunity to speak, you're going to have to tell me to be quiet. You're going to have to interject and let me be quiet, because I'm going to say how I feel. I'm going to put it all out on the table, and that's going to be it. So then once I started doing that, I found myself not being invited to be on as many committees. Going back to, wait a minute, I thought she was the acceptable Black woman that's going to come in and just have the face. She has the face, fits the status quo, sit there, look good. So we can, hey, say we have a Black woman on this committee when we hire this new coach, or we're hiring this new administrator, or whatever type of committee it may be. But I don't, it's going to take a lot of time before we become the true face, because it's not that people don't understand. They don't want to understand. They don't want to take the time to understand and to be educated. They're comfortable with who they're comfortable with. And I don't want to make this an Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark debate or battle.
No, not at all.
But it's just what came up, and it's because it's so fresh. Is what's happened. People, there are a lot of people, they're comfortable with the Caitlin Clarks because she's, for lack of a better word, she goes out, she plays, she doesn't do anything special. She has her shirt tucked in neatly to her shorts. Her shorts are at an appropriate length for some people. She wears her hair in a simple ponytail, and okay.
Well, Audrey, let's just go there. It's because she's white.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Dr. Lori, I want you to take it from here, because this is the work that you study and research.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, I was reminded of the work that organizations like ABIS has done, especially since the killing of George Floyd, and a lot of college athletic departments as well as professional leagues where they focus on diverse suppliers, for example, and trying to increase the number of Black businesses that these professional leagues and athletic departments do business for. Previous Final Fours, ABIS put out a list so that people would know when they go to a particular city how they could support Black businesses. And so I think that's kind of like the next step in what should be happening now. So it's wonderful that, you know, people who were not getting, they were not able to monetize their names, images, and likenesses are now able to do that. And hopefully we'll see greater equity across the world of sports for Black women and for Black men and for other people. But it reminds me of the politics of respectability, which, you know, Dr. Debbie, I've written about and learned about from Dr. Evelyn Higginbotham in her book, Righteous Discontent. And she tells the story of Black women who in the late 1800s through the 1920s decided that they were going to control their own images and they were going to control their own destinies. But what some people oftentimes forget about is that they were also committed to social justice issues. And so I think for, you know, Black women today in sports and Black women in general, that many of us are continuing in that tradition, but we can expand it. So while we can applaud and be glad to see Black women, you know, supporting different corporations, we also need to hold those corporations responsible for making sure that they're hiring people who might be the new face of their products and services.
Well, I will also add that if the Black woman, in all of our many shades and all of our beauty and all of our brilliance, as Shalise wrote so eloquently in her article, that if we're not going to be the face, as in certain corporations and organizations won't put us as the face, then we have to create our own, right? It's always about ownership versus loanership. And so I'm asking, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this ask, that Black men who own businesses or who are on the C-suite level, that you have to speak up for us. And you have to challenge those colleagues and say, yes, we can do this. We've got to make that move. We have to be bolder in getting support from our own community for these NIL opportunities. Now, the other important part of all of this, the business of sports, is media. And so, Shalise, I would love for you to speak to the media and its role in the storytelling and the narratives of Black women in sports.
It's been largely absent, really. You know, it's been absent, and there's, by and large, particularly in, you know, major media outlets, the stories have been told by white men. I saw something on Twitter just today that said among American media, sports, you know, the sports departments remain mostly populated by white men. And so you have people who don't understand, and as was said earlier, for some people don't care to understand the experiences that Black women have as they go through life. And, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of like ESPN in recent years before the NFL and NBA drafts in particular. And they do this like trauma porn of these Black, you know, male athletes. And, oh, look at what they overcame to get to this point. And they're only interesting if their daddy was in prison at one point, or their mama and their grandma had to work 17 jobs to be able to pay for them to be in, you know, peewee football and keep the lights on and all that kind of stuff. And we're so much more than that. And there are so many of us who don't have that experience. Many do. But, you know, specific to Black women, women's sports in general is woefully undercovered. And now you're seeing, you know, in part, as more people are coming to, thankfully, a lot of the national writers seem to be women. They are a lot of white women. But I think you just need to have more. You know, I've taught in the past a sports journalism class, and I would tell my students, because in 6 semesters, I think I can count on one hand the number of Black students I had in my sports journalism class. And I would tell them, look, if you're an aspiring NBA or NFL writer or college football, or, you know, these sports that are heavily, you know, Black and minority, I'm not saying you have to be a Black person to cover the NFL, but I'm saying is you have to understand that as these people are telling you their life stories, you have to listen and empathize and understand that how you go through life as a white person is not how the rest of us are seen and received and perceived as non-white people. And, you know, that I live in Boston, that's come up quite a bit. You know, the Boston sports media radio, Boston sports radio here in Boston is notorious for their reactions to things. And so, you know, I try to emphasize all the time, like, you don't have to be, and now there's these questions of subjectivity and objectivity, which is a myth, right? Everyone comes to their situation. Me as a journalist, I can't not use my lens and how I see life as a, you know, mixed race Black woman. I can't not be that. The thing is, because I get pushback from readers on this who say, oh, why are you so biased? I'm not biased. The gatekeepers for centuries in American media have been white men, and they are all telling stories through what makes them comfortable, and therefore what makes you comfortable as a white male reader. And I'm telling you, that's not how it is. You know, this is how it is from my perspective. And I can't, you know, now as a columnist, I give my opinion, but even when I wasn't a columnist, I still just can't separate how my life experiences. You know, I can't separate those. You know, as a journalist, you have to be fair, but is it fair if you are just completely discounting, you know, if a Black athlete says to you, oh, I experienced racism at Fenway Park, and the reaction is, no, that can't be possible that you experienced racism at Fenway Park in Boston, instead of considering for a moment, this athlete has a lot to lose by lying and has nothing to gain by telling the truth of what happened to him. And I think that's the battle. And, you know, a lot of, especially older white men in sports media, they have to get there, you know, and understand that the athletes who tell you things like that, they have nothing to gain by telling you that. You know, they're putting themselves out there. They know they may be ridiculed, but they have to say what happened to them. And you as a journalist have to be fair and listen and accept that. And I think, you know, the gatekeepers, this, you know, white male voices have crafted media in this country for so long. And it's going to take time for people to understand that that's not the way it should be anymore.
Yeah, thank you for that. Coach Bev, I got to go to you with the media. Certainly the storytelling, the narratives of your journey. In many ways, it's been very, very harmful to you in your career. And then the opportunity to tell your story and take the mic now. So what's your take on the media and its role in all of this?
I think that the way we're painted, we have to take the brush. We have to be willing to step forward and take the brush. And although they try to paint me in certain ways, I walk into every room aware of the sacrifices of the history that gave me the opportunity to walk into the room, first and foremost. And so I walk into every room as a proud, knowing Black woman. And I execute as a professional. I don't care what you think of me. You cannot erase the greatness of me. And so I don't give them that authority. I've been asked, did you really have a master's degree? by a major media outlet. And you know what my answer was? Wow, I thought you guys did have to do research. That might be something you want to research. I didn't answer. But I reflected it back upon the media. I get questions like that all the time. When I went through my adversity at Texas, someone asked the athletic directors, how often have you ever publicly put forth that you're suspending and why, and made a big deal out of it to the press? And they said, this is the first time in the history of the university that was done. And it was done purposefully for me to do the what do they call it? The perp walk? No. I don't own that. And what we have to do is we have to not own what they're saying. Dawn didn't own what they said about her team, didn't stop them from saying it, but because she didn't own it, it became less powerful. Angel didn't own the narrative of what they said. She owned her own. And that's why it's so critical for us to not believe what is written, but look for the facts. I didn't fight against the University of Texas. I fought for something. I fought for those who will follow me in that space. I didn't fight because what I did was right. I fought because you don't get to underpay us anymore, but you also, equally as important, which is why I joined the ABIS in the first place, because I want to be an advocate for those that say you also don't get to punish us more. And I'm so excited that for the most part, society said, no, you don't get to treat Angel different than you treated Caitlin for the same behavior. And you know what they tried to do? And Shalice, you could tell me if I'm wrong on this as a media. They tried to find the differences to justify the difference in treatment, which means it's your fault.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if we don't take ownership of the blame, and Shalice, Dr. Martin, I love you for saying this because Sojourner Truth is my hero. After all she'd been through, the one line that will always stay with me, ain't I a woman?
Yes.
Because they treat us less than a woman. They're treating our children as less than children. And they're saying that why do we make everything about race when they threw the first punch? They made it about race. The moment you become discriminatory, why does the abuser say, well, you made me hit you in the face? No, we're not taking that anymore. We own the room. Walk in as you are and be the greatness that you are. And that's the space we are owning.
Wow. Mic drop, mic drop.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about the coaches and their responsibility in this. So Coach Dawn Staley, my sister, has just done amazing work in navigating the media and being true to who she is, being a Philadelphian, right? Being the head coach of a team that's predominantly Black and speaking her truth. And so I'm wondering about other coaches, Black, white, brown. When are they going to use their voice? Now, I can sit here all day and call out white women coaches that don't speak up for their Black women athletes. But the role of the coach in all of this, will they take the mic? Will they stay authentic to who they are in the sense that that's not my role? Let the chief marketing officer handle it, or let the athletes have the mic. Coach Audra?
I think they're going to stay in their lane and stay in their role and let someone else do it. I really do. And of course, Dawn was my teammate for 4 years at UVA. And I would just like to say and add that she's the same person that moved into Tuttle Dorm with me back in 1988 that she is today. In terms of being humble and just, she doesn't want the spotlight. She doesn't want it. It's all about the team. It's all about other people. It's all about the people around her that has helped her to be successful. I think because Dawn has that platform and she's been so successful that she has the ability, and she's been awesome in using her platform to speak out and to say exactly what's on her mind and to say what I'm not going to tolerate. And what she does is she protects her babies. Those are her babies. And she'll tell you, nah, you ain't going to talk about my kids like this. It's not going to happen. I mean, she is a true mother to those young women, as well as a mentor. I mean, she's a true mother. I feel like other Black coaches that I talk to, they want to do it. The other Black coaches, they want to, but they're fearful because they feel if they do, then there's going to be some backlash from the administration. So they don't. In terms of another Black female in women's basketball or any other sport, who is it other than Dawn that can step out? Because Ray Tanner's going to support her. He is going to support her and be right behind her. But what other coach has that know that, hey, I'm going to stand up for my players, and this is what I'm going to say, and this is how I'm going to say it, and know that when they get back to campus, that their AD is going to, give them a pat on the back or shake their hand and say, hey, I support you 100%, and I'm right here with you, versus you going into their office and them saying, well, I've received all these negative comments. You brought a lot of negative attention to the university. A lot. I may need you to go and retract the statement, this, that, the other. So I think that's a part of it. I just don't think I've been around it, been in sports, been in women's basketball for 28 years. I just do not. And I have, like, I hate to say that it's the whole, I have a lot of white friends. A lot of my friends are white. But I have a lot of white coaches that I'm friends with and colleagues with, and no, they don't know, they're not comfortable in that space. They're not. Some of them they're just not. I mean, some of them are, but then it's like, well, if I come out and say something like, are people going to really take me serious and believe that I'm being authentic, or are they going to feel like I'm just talking just to talk? But I feel like our other sisters in coaching, our other women, women in coaching. And we have a lot of young Black women that have been hired. Tasha Butts just got the Georgia Tech job. Yolisa Jackson just received the job at, Tasha Butts just earned the head coaching job at Georgetown University. Yolisa Jackson just earned the head job at South Florida. What's my baby name? Alex Simmons just earned the job at Memphis. Katrina Merriweather just earned the head job at Cincinnati. So for those women, hopefully, and they're younger. I remember when those young ladies played. So hopefully, as we move through and the process continues, they will feel more empowered and more freedom and to speak out without there being after the media conference, speaking of the media, having the AD waiting outside in the hallway to have a conversation, or the next morning having to go into the AD's office to have a conversation about what their responses to the media the night before. And that's the fear, because we know, you have to win, you want to win, and they want you to graduate players, they want you to be professional. And well, how is that not being professional? Like, I have a right to speak my mind and speak what I want to say. And I have also a right to defend my players.
So much of this is the tradition and the status quo and not wanting to change what has been built, even though it's been built on shaky ground or it's been built immorally. Not everybody has a Dr. Lori Martin as the faculty athletics rep who can also stand by your side, stand beside you, stand behind you, stand in front of you. So before we transition to another question, Dr. Martin, Dr. Lori, would you please share your thoughts on coaches and their voice?
Yeah, first I'd like to shout out Nikki Fargas, because when she was at LSU, she was a powerful supporter of the college athletes and was one of the advisors who helped to establish the first Black Student Athletes Association after the killing of George Floyd. And so let me also, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, she's president of the Las Vegas Aces, who just won the WNBA championship. So we're super proud of her, and she's the reason why I'm here and connected with ABIS. So I'm really grateful for her. But I agree with the point that you have some challenges in terms of coaches feeling like they can speak out and be supported. Again, ABIS recently issued a statement about just how underrepresented coaches are to begin with, and how they're oftentimes punished more harshly and terminated more quickly than their counterparts. And so some people don't want to, forgive the expression, invite that kind of smoke. So instead, they just decide that they are going to go along to get along. And that's not unusual. I mean, there are just some people, not just in the world of sports, but in Black life in particular, that decide that they're not going to risk themselves and their careers and their families and their threats on their communities, and they're just going to play along to get along and try to reap the material benefits. Then there are others who say, I don't care what it costs, I'm going to use my platform and I'm going to work to bring about change. And I don't fault anyone for making those decisions. Everyone's got to live with the decisions, that they make. But I don't know that we're going to see a seismic shift anytime soon in coaches suddenly speaking out against matters. But we may see periodically, like we did after the killing of George Floyd, when something is just so over the top and so horrific that people feel compelled in the middle of an epidemic to do something, then you see people speaking out who otherwise would not. The challenge is to make sure they stay focused and on task once everybody, or the majority of folks, move on, so we don't get to a period where the issues about racial inequities are forgotten. So it's really great that we have ABIS and this platform to continue to be the voice.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well stated.
Mhm.
So we can't bring together a group of women of color, without talking about our faith. And so I'd love for you all just to go around the horn and share how your faith holds you up, keeps you moving forward, inspires you during times like this, when we are on center stage for all the right reasons and sometimes for all the wrong reasons. So speak to your faith. I'll start off with you, Shalise.
Really, my faith is more, I write, I have 3 kids, and, my born 3 daughters, all of them Black, one of them we know queer. And I write for them, I use my voice for them. And all of the other young women, little girls that look like them. Our kids run the gamut. They're 29 and 7. So, and I also coach. I coach 7th through 12th grade girls track and field team. And, I just see. So when I was with them this afternoon, and I just try to impart whatever pearls I can in them. And when I sit down to write, and sometimes, I guess I've been called fearless sometimes in the things that I write, particularly if I'm taking on the NFL and condemning them for the many racial and sexual, anti-women things that they do, and protect people who behave that way and stuff like that. But, whether it's writing about taking away trans kids' opportunities to, be in sports and whatever current racial foolishness is happening, they're always in the back of my mind. Our kids, my husband, the kids that I coach, and they're the ones really who keep me going, because I have a platform, and Yahoo is not a small platform, and I never lose sight of that.
Thank you for that. Coach Audra.
Well, I'm in the country now. I am a born and bred Georgia peach. And in Georgia, for me, being from Georgia, being a small town, we grew up in the church. It was the church. You talk about, want to know about faith. We're on the subject of faith. And for me, I'm a project. The Lord's not through with me yet. He's still working on me. And it was a blessing, unbelievable blessing. Because Debbie, my husband. My husband is a PK kid, true. His mother is a minister. His father's a minister. My husband's very solid in his faith and has really helped me continue to grow in my faith. Our son, AJ, is very solid in his faith. Adrian kind of just takes after her mama. We're a little slow getting to the altar. We're trying to get there. We going. And I know that based on how I grew up and, being a, product of a single mom, I was a welfare baby. Grandma, was instrumental in our lives. And I have an older sister, older brother. And I know that everyone's different. I know that there's a higher being. I know that there's a God, because I wouldn't be here if there was not. And one of my favorite songs, it talks about you have to have a test in order to have a testimony. And I have so many testimonies. And there have been so many times when I didn't think that I could make it. I didn't think that I could do it. I didn't think that I could persevere through. And then I would think about my mother and how hard she worked. And I remember winters where she would have like a light windbreaker and we would all have coats. And just think about just how she put us first all the time. She put us first all the time. And, for me, I just know that the reason that I have been successful, the reason I have been the bounce back, the reason that I continue to I received a phone call the other day from a coach asking me, prominent coach, said, Audra, who should I hire? This person or that person? And those two people both had worked for me years ago. And I said, hire this one. And they were like, okay, that's what I thought, because I wasn't going to make a move until I talked to you. And that just gives me such a good sense of pride, and like, you know, because your character is everything that's you and who you are. And so the fact of that I've been able to be me, and people have continued to respect me, even though I'm not in coaching anymore. But when I was in coaching, I did the right thing, and I treated everyone the same. And that comes from my faith in the fact that, you know, I have to be who I am. And I know that, you know, God is watching over me, and everything that I do. I know that it's like, it doesn't just happen. It's not by happenstance. It does not happen that way. No, let me start preaching, because but it doesn't happen that way. God has guided me in everything that I have done. I look back from, again, like I say, from the time I was a little child, and being quiet, because I was I was taller than everybody. Y'all, I was 5'7" in the 5th grade. Have you seen now seeing a 5'7" fifth grader, it wasn't a big deal. But back in 1982, that was a big deal. Like a 5'7", I was 6'1" by the time I was in the 7th grade. So I was always trying to shrink and disappear and not be seen, because I was so much taller and I felt so awkward. But that's where my faith in God and, you know, my spirituality and going to church and listening and hearing stories from the Bible, and just understanding and knowing, watching my mother and my grandmother and their faith, and my sister and my brother and their faith. And just, you know, it's like we always talk about a village, and everyone around me in my community here in Georgia, here in Millersville, and just how it's just it's just who I am. And I know that in everything, you know, I would be nothing without, you know, God's grace. And I'm nowhere near perfect. And I know there are things sometimes I was just like, Lord, I know I haven't talked to you in a while. Can you help me through this? And, you know, I get through it. And I just have a strong sense of faith, a strong sense of belief. And I just know that, you know, he's with me every step of the way. And I'll leave you with this. Another one of my favorite gospel songs, one of the lines is, you know, thank you, God, for a praying mother. Because I know that, you know, my mom prays for us, all of us, every single day, both of my moms, my husband's mother and my mother. And I, you know, I try to instill that, do my best to instill that in my children. And, you know, my husband definitely does that. You know, I wish I had he's a rock, you know, and I feel like, you know, for our culture, you know, a lot of people have a lot. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I want to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm not going to go. But a lot of people have a lot of different views about, you know, religion, and that, you know, before we came to this country, you know, we were made, you know, to have this, you know, to believe, you know, in Christianity. Like we had our own religion.
Oh, you are going somewhere else.
I'm going down that rabbit hole. So I'm coming back down that rabbit hole, because Alice went down that rabbit hole and she got too deep. So I ain't going down there. That'll be for the next segment. But anyway, yes, I'm solid. I feel like I'm very solid in my faith. I'm still continuing to work on it. And I do believe that, you know, God has guided me every step of the way. And I have so many blessings, so many things to be so thankful, and just being able to be a part of this panel. You know, Debbie, you're like a huge part. You know, Debbie, she doesn't, you know, for her, I mean, she's phenomenal. I mean, being the matriarch of the African women's basketball players that came through UVA, the first African American athlete to receive a scholarship. Without Debbie, it wouldn't have been me. There wouldn't have been a Dawn. There wouldn't have been a Daphne Hall.
All right, Audrey, you're going to get me crying. So thank you. Thank you for your authenticity.
Got to give you your flowers, baby. Got to give you your flowers.
Understood and appreciated and loved. Dr. Lori, faith keeps you going. I know, because you've seen some tough times at that amazing university.
So I'm going to carry along the gospel songs theme, because the one thing, the song that I thought of when you brought the question up was encourage yourself. And, you know, sometimes you have to encourage yourself, but sometimes you also need folks to help encourage you. And so one of the things I'm very proud about of some of the Black women athletes, both in the college level and professional level, is that they are unapologetically who they are. But that's not the case for everyone. We talk a lot about mental health challenges for coaches, for the Black population in general, for Black women athletes. So it's really important for me to be in community and to have people who encourage me and that I can encourage. So I'm forever thankful and grateful to my father, who hopefully is still watching on the panel. And then, of course, for my sons and the newly established Department of African and African American Studies at LSU, just been really powerful throughout my journey. And of course, to the wonderful people of ABIS who never gave up on me. As much as I try to contribute, there are times when you can be pulled in different directions, and to have folks who really value to pull you back in, and is really something that I appreciate. So being part of a community where I can support and encourage others is really important and meaningful to me, and having people who can do the same for me is just invaluable.
Thank you. Coach Bev Kearney, let's close us out. Your faith.
I want to first just touch up on one thing, which is there are a lot of advocates on behalf of our people who are in those spaces. And just as someone brought up what Nikki did at LSU prior to moving on to the ACEs, but it didn't get covered. I won so that I could have the space to be an advocate, because the greater the visibility, the greater the successes, the greater the platform. So I prayed for larger platforms, but being prepared on that platform comes from a place internally. So first and foremost, it's not about just getting a seat, but being productive in the seat so that your voice becomes a value to the room. So we have to succeed in those spaces if we are allowed there, because that opens the door for others. I always knew that when I walked into a space, my success, my presentation, my advocacy would become a role model for the next ones up. Dawn is doing the same. But if there's only one of us, you will never see a piece of pepper in a bowl of salt. We have to be more present. So the one thing that faith has done for me is that it gave me the power to tap into the magic that is untouchable by outside entities. You can bend me, you can move me, but you can't break me and you can't own me. And in order to have the courage to do that, the one thing that I always felt I was missing was not a voice, was not a presentation, was not an advocacy, was not a platform. It's who would fight for me, which is why I joined ABIS. Because not everyone had access to the knowledge of the power that exists within them and the magic that exists within them through the faith of the universe that comes through me, to me, and for me. So that's why places like ABIS that support, if you make a stand, you're not alone on this worldly position. But in order to make that stand, you have to have the power of the universe and whatever your God is. And I always say universe because everyone serves faith from a different perspective. And we must honor that space. Like I've studied every religion that I could imagine. Why? Because I want to meet people where they are without judgment and find not our differences, but our commonalities. And the commonality of God and greatness in the universe is love and gratitude. So if we walk into that, we don't have to worry about humility. We don't have to worry about ego. We don't have to be worried about being destroyed in the spaces we're in, because we're where we're supposed to be in this moment. And we walk in that faith and that knowing of the greatness of us. So that's my spiel. But I also want to say that we also have to show up and be at our best in order for that voice to be heard on a greater platform. And that's what makes LSU special. That's what made Dawn special. It's not that other people aren't speaking up. Their platforms aren't as good or aren't as big.
Mm. Woo! Powerful words, my sisters. Wow. Whew. I'm thinking about faith and giving. As humans, we have our frailties, right? And we are all givers and takers. But my faith reminds me to always be more of a giver than a taker. And so I'll speak to the young people who might be listening to this broadcast or the recording later on, that whenever you go and you ask for something from someone, whether it's an elder, whether it's an instructor, to make sure that you ask them, how can I help you? How can I assist you? Be a giver. And that's what my God, my universe has done for me from when I was just a little one to my wise woman stage that I'm at now. And so we just have to remember to be givers in so many ways. And as Coach Bev said, to lead with love, right? Love and fear are two of the most powerful forces in the world. But if our actions can lead with love, I think it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I thank you, my sisters. I thank you for this opportunity to be with you. Can you see us, Black women in sports? We are here. We are talking. We are making things happen. We are leading. We are supporting. And I think it's only appropriate to close with a stanza from Dr. Maya Angelou, "And Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise." So peace and blessings to our audience. Thank you for being a part of this webcast. I want to give special thanks to Ashley Samuels, to Nico Stevens, and Brent Latin with Young Pros Entertainment. Have a blessed evening. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
An honor.
Nice
Thank you.
ladies.
Good
Wonderful.
night.
Good
And
night.
remember, we are ABIS.
That's right.
Yeah.
We are abis.org.
Good night.